Hello and welcome to WHIR TV. I'm Anastasia Tabanos. Peter Zeismann recently sat on a panel of marketing experts at ISPCon to discuss the right and wrong ways to market your hosting brand. Peter is responsible for Fat Cow's marketing, advertising, and brand development, and over the last 4 years has expanded the Fat Cow name into one of the most profitable brands in the sector. And to top it all off, he's now the president of his own marketing firm, Rune Stone Communications. Peter is here today to share his experiences, insights, and tips on marketing for web hosts. Hi Peter, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Anastasia. Thanks for having me.
So can you give us a short bio on yourself? You used to work for Fat Cow, and now you have your own marketing firm. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Just up until recently, actually, I worked as a marketing director with Jackie Fuel at Fat Cow for almost 5 years, and then we were acquired by Endurance International Group. Endurance International is a much bigger company, and we had about 5 other hosting brands. So I was actually the marketing director, advertising director, and creative director for Bizland and Fat Cow and Pure Host and Hypermart, all acquisitions done by EIG. But up until recently, we've been still headquartered in Albuquerque because that's where Fat Cow was, but we made the decision to transition that actual location out of the picture. So it was just that time, and I decided, hey, you know, I have a lot of experience in the hosting market, so I decided to put out my own shingle, so to speak, and develop a marketing services organization that caters just to hosting. But I've been in the advertising business for many, many years. I started out as creative director for Joe Camel, doing Reynolds and Young and Rubicon, so I've been doing this game for a long time.
Is there anything you think is important to keep in mind when marketing for hosting companies? Is there anything unique about the hosting industry when it comes to marketing?
Actually, yes and no. I mean, anytime you're talking about marketing, there's certain unique aspects because every company has their own brand, their own DNA, their own, path to the marketplace, so to speak. But, with technology where it is today, with pay-per-click and AdWords, there's a sense that there's an immediacy to advertising and marketing. And sometimes companies tend to forego the actual fundamentals of measurement and targeting, all the things that really make advertising and marketing work together for companies. So I think one of the biggest pitfalls potentially is to ignore those fundamentals and just actually go out and buy ads and look at just customers, bring customers in the door, rather than think about what type of customer do I really want, what customer is going to provide the most revenue for my company.
What are some good tactics you've seen companies use?
I think from a tactical perspective, it's really, first of all, to keep every single thing you do from the most basic internal communications to market-facing advertising on brand. In other words, decide where your brand is, what it is, and make sure that it's consistently deployed throughout every single thing you do. I think that's tremendously important. And actually that exercise leads you to a very consistent experience for your customers, which tends to make them stay and be loyal and refer and do all the things that we really want hosting customers to do.
On the other side of the spectrum, can you give me examples of any major mistakes some companies make when it comes to marketing?
Well, I mean, I think there's, it's always, hindsight is 20/20, and I've seen a lot of companies, I think, once again, launch very large, wide-sweeping online advertising campaigns without thinking about actually how are these campaigns affecting their brand? How is their perception? When someone sees an ad, I mean, that's basically representing your company. Sure, it's designed to bring someone in, but yet it's still a representation of your company. So I think it's really, once again, that lack of consistency and maybe seeing companies advertising at times and in media properties where it really is off-brand for that company.
Can you give me a solid example here? Are there any specific examples you can think of to share with us?
We have a pretty wide marketing mix, or we did at Fat Cow, that spanned from print to actually online. We were a long-time advertiser in magazines like WHIR magazine and PC World. And I think one of the biggest mistakes I would see consistently is I would always obviously look at the magazine to see how our print came out, and I would see new hosting companies and competitors actually coming in trying to emulate us a little bit by placing an ad on or near us. But invariably I'd see these competitors only place 1 or 2 ads and then they would go away. So it's really having the patience to see a campaign through and not say, well, if I don't have 1 or 2 customers out of this, it won't work. As an example, Wired Magazine produces more referring customers for us than any other property. So on the surface, we may only get 100 customers, yet those 100 customers refer 5 times as much as another media property, so to speak. But once again, you have to measure that. You have to measure your own success. So if you're spending the money, make sure that you're measuring it and making sure that every single customer is tracked from the time they see your ad to the time they sign up.
So if a company measures how well marketing campaigns do, are they more likely to be successful?
Absolutely. I think it's true in any enterprise. If something is measured, you tend to attach more importance to it, especially when you're spending so many dollars in a marketplace that's so diverse and is so deeply cluttered with competitors that you really need to make sure that every dollar is spent in the most effective fashion possible, and being able to track that again and measure it against established targets. I mean, you'll certainly set forth some sort of acquisition target for customers. In other words, you'd say, well, we can't spend more than $50 a customer. So if you're not tracking that and you're actually averaging 75, you're already outside of your budget, which once again could throw off the rest of your hosting for the rest of the company. So,
do you know if the majority of hosters are actually on top of their measuring nowadays?
Without disclosing any specific names or numbers, I'd have to say I have seen companies that are spending in excess of $70,000 to $80,000 a month without any form of ROI tracking. So that's a yes.
That seems incredible, actually.
It does, and I think part of it is where the hosting market has gone, where it's become such an imperative that we bring in new customers every day any way possible, that we're not looking at what the actual impact of the customer type that we're bringing in, where they're coming from, and how much they're actually costing us at the end of the day. It's sort of an afterthought. So the success of, I think, most of the major players in the industry has to do with their longevity and their ability to stay in the game. And in order to stay in the game, you need the ability to maximize every single effort in this business and know where every single dollar is going.
On a lighter note, what do you think about web hosts utilizing non-traditional marketing methods? There have been companies that have gotten their logos tattooed on people's foreheads, or another company recently sponsored a birth. Do you find that it usually brings in a good response?
I think every company, once again, is unique, and every company has their own brand, and deploying a number of different marketing vehicles, promotional or otherwise, can be really beneficial for a company. I mean, if you want your brand to be known as sort of fun, cutting edge, irreverent, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, however, if you are consistently finding that a majority of your customers are coming from very staid corporate business and small to medium-sized businesses, then it doesn't work. So it's really matching your brand to the media and saying, yes, certain things work for certain companies. But yeah, I think hosting is a great avenue, for the most part, shared hosting, to go out there and try new things. I mean, somebody has to do it.
I guess it depends on who you're trying to attract, but is there no fear that you'd be seen as less professional?
I think there's always that fear, and once again, it's really knowing. When you know your brand, you'll know your audience. If you don't know your audience and you're not comfortable to take those risks with an audience that you know that to some extent how they're going to react, then you shouldn't do it.
Are there any rules you like to keep in mind when you market for hosters?
I think that there's the propensity to really just spend online, buy AdWords, and hope for the best, and ignore some really fundamental tenets of doing the legwork and the groundwork, the predecessors to that, really knowing your customers, thinking about your brand, thinking about how those customers will contribute to your company's growth 3 months, 6 months, hopefully 3 years after you acquire them. And there's been a lot of talk about instituting loyalty programs and retention programs, but as an example at Fat Cow, those were mostly reminders or nudges, because what we did, the upfront thinking, we targeted folks that we knew were psychographically and demographically predisposed to loyalty, to referring. We seek them out in specific media opportunities. So it's really seeing the big picture, working backwards. That's what marketing is. Too often we look at marketing as separate sort of media instances. Oh, it's online, or it's this. That's one piece of it. But when you think in terms of real marketing, you're thinking about how it's going to work for your company over the long haul.
Is there a particular medium that is most effective for marketing web hosts?
Part of it is that there's a process. Marketing, once again, getting back to the process, is that while the focus on outrageous PR activity and sort of thing might work for CI Host. It's not going to work for, John's guys at Hostway. And really, marketing, traditionally is a mix of media, and finding that mix is initially sort of a costly event because there's a lot of trial and error involved in it. As an example, when I first came to Fat Cow, we had about a $400,000 budget. We were buying anything and everything across print and online, and I trimmed that by about 40% and increased the number of customers just by pulling back on things that don't work. Once again, the measurement we talked about will help you, prioritize your spending, see what, you have to try things to see what works and what doesn't work because the market changes so often. And the other thing is to try and avoid congestion. Just because a lot of people are in a spot doing something doesn't mean it's the best space for you. So I think the media side the media planning and strategy is a critical aspect of marketing success.
In your opinion, what are the top 3 most effective marketing tactics you would recommend to web hosts?
If I had to say 3, in the current market space, I would say well-researched, targeted customers. In other words, know your target audience. Know who you can go after, when you can go after them, and how much it's going to cost you to go after them. And second would be to measure that exercise. And then I think third is to really not compartmentalize marketing. Make it part of the overall operational mix of your company. Create a marketing engine, because in hosting is driven by referrals, retention, and revenue per customer. So if you have those 3 pieces and you're working with the marketing group and the operating group, even if you're 5 people or you're 500, if you have a really closely coupled marketing strategy, it's going to benefit you in the long run.
So Peter, where do you see this going? How do you see marketing changing in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think as it relates to the hosting market, the downward sort of pricing pressures and people going to market exclusively on price is going to change, because that can only go on so long. It's going to result in oversold servers and high churn rates and people jumping from one. Basically, what happened if you think about the cellular or telephony markets, where people are, jumping back and forth for $1, somebody will call you. So I think that those things are going to cause some upheaval in terms of the number of clients that are out there and customers that are available. And then I think also companies are going to there's some walls to be hit. The cost to acquire customers is going to increase, I think, annually, to the point where it's going to be prohibitive for a lot of companies that don't have the resources to reach out and acquire customers, or have not acquired a customer base that refers sufficiently. I mean, you should have at least 80% of your customer base referring at least one customer, and at least 55 to 60% contribute to your overall new business and organic growth. If you're not there, it's going to cost you a lot of money. So I think that would be number 2, that just the costs are going to become prohibitive. So down the road, I think it's going to be a market of probably fewer larger hosts and fewer smaller individual hosting companies. Yet they're still there, because there's the entrepreneurial spirit is alive, and the reseller market is really big. But I think that the market clutter is going to decrease over time.
Great. Thanks for joining us today, Peter.
You're most welcome. I appreciate the time.